This is the CreaseCast.
So, obviously, I was occupied with some more manic Utica Comets tracking, which is always very good on my health and for the betterment of hashtag our Canucks, hashtag Canucks, Canucks Army, Canucks Nation, to know how their prospects are doing on the farm as it relates to microstats. So I wasn't able to give you the proper celebration or yahooing that you deserved for your very deserved and warranted selection to the Botchford Fellowship. So I put together some things.
Oh my god.
I visited the old dollar store, not the one I used to work at. We can get into that in an off the post episode, but I got some things to celebrate. I didn't get champagne though, because obviously, as you're just discussing before this episode was about to start recording, I am very, very ill right now, which is just fucking wonderful timing. But anyway,
and yet you're here like a champ. Hey!
Oh, that's disappointing.
Oh, it didn't work.
I thought it was the one that was gonna go like, free! You know what I mean? It's just it's just plastic.
It does cool trick. It does the trick. It doesn't make the noise, but it does the
physical thing I want it to do, but it doesn't make the noise, which is kind of lame. Oh yeah. Okay.
If you're not watching, if you're not watching
the
YouTube channel, so okay, from what I can see, I better maximize the window because I usually keep it smaller. Okay, so there's a botch panel or like a little stream of like banner up in the corner, and then I can't fully read what the little banner underneath it says
the banner reads, "It is your Botchford Project." Period. But like on my obviously with my eye screens, it's very legible, but because of lighting reasons, it doesn't really translate. You have to really zoom in to kind of read it. Yeah. And also, I spelled Botchford wrong, which was very disappointing. But as I said, I'm very sick right now, so my brain is working at like 30% capacity, which is half as much as it usually works at. So it's a little rough go for me right now. But I figured I'd give you some kudos for your selection, as we were also discussing before we started recording. I'm sure people saw me tweeting a bunch, if anyone needed help with their applications, to shoot me a line. I didn't actually expect to get as much of a turnout as I did, but I helped quite a few people with their Botchford applications and gave them advice on how I would approach this year's application, because obviously only 3 people were going to be picked out of, God knows, 100 or so applicants. So you really needed to hammer in the uniqueness, your originality, who you are as a person, making it sound like you really fucking care about what you're doing and what you're applying for. And then I realized after helping all of these people apply that I had also helped my boy here, Lachlan Irvin, with his application. And I thought, oh no, what happens if I accidentally help someone else get picked for the Botchford Project instead of Lachlan? Which to be clear, that's totally fine. It's a wonderful program.
100%.
If Lachlan didn't get in this round of 3 out of 100, he was going to get picked for next season anyway. The guy works way too hard to not have been chosen. Fortunately, he gets to get picked for the Bizarro season where everything's done over Zoom. There's going to be multiple people in one day. I'm so excited for him. I texted so many people being like, my fucking boy got picked.
Did you actually?
Oh, yeah.
I know.
I screenshot it. I sent it to Roxanne and was like, oh, my God, my boy. And so I was really happy for you. Really, I enjoyed your episode where you very nervously tried to recap the entire situation. And so it's great to see. I'm glad you got picked. It's a very exclusive club full of very cool people. We don't have an exclusive chat yet, which is, it probably needs to be worked on. There should be a handshake, like a Stonecutters type thing where we have robes and meetings and discuss the direction of the team that we are going to dictate, kind of like the actual media does with their group, the actual Stonecutters. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that we should probably get on this, especially now that there's two of us. You can split the load a bit. Like you take it some days, I take it the other days, and then we kind of control the media from here on out. Get some more banners going. I don't know, but we're not going to spend too much time talking about Lachlan's selection, even though it's fucking awesome. We're here to talk about, unfortunately, actually, yeah, to sum it up right here. So thanks for tuning in, folks, to the CreaseCast. This has been a little celebration for Lachlan. If you want to turn the episode off right here, it is completely understandable because we are about to start talking about the Canucks' very, very sleepy efforts against the Ottawa Senators in the last two games. They won one, I think, and then they got shut out in another one or something. I don't know. Point is, they were very ugly games. They were not enjoyable to watch. They were sad to watch because you just, as critical as you wanted to be of the team for their kind of sleepy efforts and some standout performances from the goaltenders, you just kind of felt bad for all the players that were playing like shit because all of the concerns we had when they were coming back to play against the Toronto Maple Leafs were realized in this series against Ottawa, where the team looked tired. Very, 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 very tired. And I think I tweeted this several times during the game that, it's just Ottawa. Like, this is the time to play Kole Lind, get the kids in, why not? And someone flipped out on me being like, it's just Ottawa, ? They just kicked the shit out of your team. It's like, buddy.
Wait, like a Canucks fan jumped into your mentions? Okay.
I feel like he's a Sens or a Leafs fan. I don't know how he really got into my DMs or whatever, or my slides.
I got some weird interactions from a Senators fan, on the first game, on the first game of the series, for some reason, which is so weird, especially because you'd think that they'd just be excited at this point because their whole team is
be happy.
Their team is bad, but they aren't playing like it. Yeah, they aren't playing like a bad team.
They're playing over their heads where they are getting very impressive games out of a bunch of kids and winning games. And then obviously the asterisk being they're winning games against a Canucks team that is clearly fatigued from COVID. No matter what Brandon Sutter wants to say in his pregame availability, saying they're all fully healthy and good to go, there's no way you watched that loss the other night and said to yourself, oh yeah, this is totally the Canucks of, old. This is pre-COVID Canucks. No, they're no first line centered by Bo Horvat and featuring Besser and Miller should be getting caved by the likes of Josh Norris and Alex Formenton. No, that is not competitive integrity embodied. That is just a tired team facing against a young group that is eager to basically tell the haters to go fuck themselves and say, we're the Sens. Yeah, you make all your we're an AHL team jokes, but we're really gonna stick it to your team and win games that we probably shouldn't. And like you said in your last solo episode, the Canucks continue to win games they shouldn't and lose games they should have won. And the last two were perfect examples of it. I mean, God, we have to get into the Infinity Gauntlet. And I came into the episode thinking, all right, I don't want to pick a goaltender because it's so obvious.
Why not? Why on earth not?
It's just so boring picking the goalie every time because it's it's going to be every game from here on out because the way they're playing, it does come down to Braden Holtby standing on his head.
You know what? I'm willing to meet you on this. Let's say for today, as great as Braden Holtby was in that last game and has been for this whole first week that they've been back, let's say this. I will go for not a goal. I will elect to go not for a goalie. We will talk about Holtby. But I will pick someone other than a goalie today. Because I think we can find two players from the last two games. Because one was a win. One of those games was a win. So there were some good performances in that first game. to draw from as well. So we can kind of go off of the two, and I'm sure we can find two players that aren't goalies that did well.
Ew, that's hard. That's like legitimately hard, though.
Okay. Well, then,
I mean,
do you want me to go first? I can try and I can pick one first.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Like I will give you some time here. Because you know what, like again, the first game I think they did like that 4-2 game, like it's the bounce back from the original loss. Overall they got good contribution from their top six for the most part. They played a much better game than the first one. Again, still too close for a team like Ottawa. You should be doing a lot better. Again, but also circumstances dictate that that's not necessarily possible here. So just winning is a nice touch. If I'm going to pick anyone here from those last couple games, besides a goaltender, I think one of the people I would have to give credit to is JT Miller. I think he looked very good in the first game. He had good contributions. I believe he had 2 points. And even in the second game, like they couldn't get much going. They couldn't get like no one could get anything going. But I would argue that they gave them the best effort. Like again, it was a matter of the team looked gassed and tired, and there's no amount of like luck that can really undo that to a point. Like it can only take you so far. And that's not for a lack of effort. Like when they lost yesterday, it wasn't for a lack of effort. It was simply just because they're working from so far behind the 8 ball. It's very tough for them to come back into this. So I'd give it to Miller, and then I don't know who you have planned to pick, but I would say like as an honorary mention as well, Olio Levy had his second NHL goal, and I think that's worth giving props to as well. So I'll give JT Miller the gauntlet, and I don't know. Levy can hold a thumb, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, he gets like half of a jewel, I guess. Yeah. He gets the bracer. He gets like the glue that holds the jewel in place.
Yeah. Or he gets that fake one on Asgard, the fake one.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, because that second game, like I tweeted after, like I fell asleep with 5 minutes left in like the third period. Like obviously it's because I felt like I ended up being very sick, but like just. What was there to take away? Like Hoglander was really trying hard. Like he was really trying to make a difference and score in every shift of his. Right. It was nothing new. Good. It's like it's his usual like dynamic self. He was really just going above and beyond. The defense looked exhausted. Quinn Hughes looked pretty good actually. He looked like he was kind of regaining his like defensive play a bit. He wasn't so like prone to giving the puck away. He was chewing a lot of minutes, like looked good on both ends of the puck. Like that was at least like kind of encouraging to see. But yeah, I guess same thing. Yoel Levy, I guess, gets the single stone on a giant infinity blocker just by pure virtue of having tied the game with his slap shot. Maybe Howrluck gets like a bit of the glue as well that holds the gem in place because of that screen of his. That's about it. Yeah,
maybe it's not registering on the score sheet so much, but like he's a good energy guy. Like he really does a decent job of bringing a little bit of. And I actually talked about this when I did my 650 hit on Saturday. Oh yeah, I did that as well. That's new.
Oh yeah.
The last time, we were talking about like what players from the like from that bottom six have done well, like the kind of like the replaceables or the expendables, I guess, if we want to call them that.
Yeah.
And Howrluck, he's really good about. I always notice him when he's out there, which is something that you don't always get with that bottom six because of just they're an older group. They're not that fast. They're not forechecking like crazy all the time. So when you get somebody like Howrluck who steps in and actually kind of makes a little bit of an impact in that regard, that's a good step. And
it's also interesting because like he took so long kind of to get to this point where he did stand out as like a bottom six player. Like he was pretty forgettable when he finally did slide into the lineup after coming off of IR, and it was just kind of like, oh,
he had such a rough start. That's such a
no kidding.
Literally gets hurt in the training camp with Tyler Mott. I never forget Tyler Mott just turned into an absolute bull in a china shop for
Yeah,
for
decided
the
to
whole
fight
training
everybody.
camp.
Yeah, bit
Yeah.
odd.
Oh
Uh,
man.
but yeah, that was actually totally strange. Fought Adam Gaudette.
Fought Adam Gaudette,
Slew foot
injured
Adam
Howard
Gaudette.
Luck.
Yeah, just a baffling
What a
train.
weird year.
That was
This
actually,
is
when you think about it, that training camp basically told everyone what they should expect for the season, and it was just going to be a nightmare. And it started because of Tyler Mott, and he did the smart thing. He messed things up at camp, and then he got injured
oh no.
and disappeared
Oh
for a couple
no.
weeks.
Bye, suckers. I'm out of here.
Come on, suckers!
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
man.
it's good that he is standing out now, because obviously we're kind of in audition season. I don't think this is a playoff push. They need to win 5 straight to basically be on par with Montreal, and then need to somehow play better than them down the final 12 games of the season, or whatever it is, 17 left. So that's a big ask for a team that's coming off of, even without COVID factoring in it, that's a big ask from any hockey team that struggled pretty much the entire season. And now you have Calgary apparently is coming back a bit.
A little bit.
Winnipeg loses their star player. Montreal's just kind of playing 500 hockey, and sometimes you get a good team, sometimes you get a shit team. You have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's such a disaster that the Canucks conceivably could make a playoff push here, but it asks so much of their players to have to try and bridge that gap and then some to make playoffs. And during that stretch, you need guys like Howard, Highmore, Boyd, Vesey, all these guys to step up, so it isn't just this weird, funky top 6 carrying the rest of the lineup. They need bottom 6 contribution, and they're not getting it at all. And so when you see Howard providing a good screen, you're like, okay, it's finally some positives, something that might lead to some bottom 6 production down the stretch. Who knows? But there's nothing from anyone else at all. I don't see anything from Travis Boyd. I see nothing from VC anymore. Highmore
VC had a particularly bad week. He was, and I talked about this on the solo episode where there was that one play in Toronto that I'm still baffled, the first Ottawa game that I'm still baffled by, where he's on the power play unit. Mm-hmm. He's parked in front of the net. He gets the puck right in front of Matt Murray. And he's right there. Defensemen have not picked him up right away. They did not notice he was back there. And VC, literally, all he has to do is try and hook it around him and in or something. But instead he passes back. He's expecting the long shot to JT Miller best to be on that side. But of course it just immediately gets stolen by the Senators defenseman coming back and flipped out. And I just remember thinking that moment, where is your confidence is gone if you're gonna make that play in front of that, literally on top of the crease. He was right on top of the crease with nobody on him, and he passed, which maybe that was drawn up, but even then I'd be shocked to find that out.
It wasn't a play you would ever see a defensive coach like Baumgartner be like, hey, if you're in this position, just blindly backhand the puck out.
No, and
there's a couple plays like that too. Even Vertanen had one where he had no one available and he just iced the puck for no reason. He wasn't in the crease, but it was the same idea. They had possession and then it was just I'm gonna throw it away.
Yeah,
it's bizarre.
And in VC's case, he was getting opportunities to play in the top 6 because again they're down Pettersson. They don't have anybody else who can step into that spot right now. And by the end of it, according to Jeff Patterson, just 2 shifts in the third period and only 1 over the final 14 and a half minutes of a game where they're losing 2-1.
And their lineup isn't good to begin with. That's
your
bad
lineup
sign.
That's a real bad omen. And I think Justin Bourne was talking about this on Halford and Bruff. You would know better than I would. Because I know you listen pretty avidly to that show. I only am able to check in every now and then because I'm at work. But I believe one of the things he was talking about today was when it comes to the Canucks depth and everything, is like that you need to ask the question, like, what's your role? Like, what role are you playing on this team? Like, if you're in that depth spot. And we've talked about this on the show before, like with getting call-ups from Utica. If you can fill a specific spot for a little bit, eventually they'll make room for you to play the role that the job that you are more capable, that you're best at.
Yeah.
So you have to prove you deserve a shot in the lineup, and sometimes that means doing something different than you normally are capable of. Yeah. And right now, there really isn't any, but out of all those like expendable guys, there isn't really anyone in there who I could point at and be like, oh, this is their role. This is exactly what they do. This is their job. The only person you can do that with is Tyler Mott. What is Tyler Mott? He's penalty kill. He's energy on the fourth line. Jumps up into your third at points.
Aggressive forechecker, can skate.
Bingo.
I mean, occasionally gets off offense and whatever.
Howard Luck, you can maybe start getting there, but even then, the fact that he doesn't chip in so much on the offensive side of the puck is still a little bit working against him, and is working against him when it comes to like getting a long-term contract or at the very least getting another contract next year, sort of thing. And right now, I don't know what would keep Jimmy Vesey in the lineup versus, say, a Kole Lind. Like, why wouldn't you go in that direction if you're Travis Green at this point? Just because you already know what you have in Vesey? It might be time to give Lind a look here.
I think it's like a case of you know what you have in everyone in your bottom six. You know what you've got in Travis Boyd. You know what you got in Jace Howerluck. You know what you've got in Highmore. You know what you have in all of them, right? So it's like, obviously, Travis Green's a lame duck coach. His whole thing is he needs to fight for playoffs. And if he rules that he can't win with Kole Lind in the lineup, then, I mean, that's his call. But at the same time, you're throwing someone like Jimmy Vesey or Matthew Highmore into the top six to play with Besser and Horvat, or with Pearson or Miller or Hoglander, like whatever. The point is, you're finding space for these like bottom six grinders who will cap out their NHL careers as bottom six forwards. They're not going any higher than that. So surely you can get Kole Lind into the lineup and play a couple shifts in the top six. And worst case scenario, you bump him down to the bottom six and you give him the Mark Michaelis treatment, and he sticks at 4 minutes on the entire evening. It doesn't matter. Like, once they played Michaelis that 4 minute night, it told me that they are still going to try to gun for playoffs, but they are still going to limit ice time for forwards that conceivably are in the lineup because they believe they give them a chance to win. But 4 minutes isn't opportunity for anyone to prove you can win. It's just a body. So make that body a guy who's on an expiring ELC who might get taken in the expansion draft. You need to know what you've got in him. And I'm sure, I mean, depending on what Jim Benning's status is with ownership, depending on what Travis Green's standing is with ownership, someone needs to kind of put the hammer down and be like, okay, I know you guys are pushing for playoffs. If you put Kole Lind into a game and you lose and we miss playoffs because of it, like, that's on me, but we need to know what he can do, because we're not going to have any other chance to do it. Like, this 4-game stretch was the absolute time to see what they've got in Ulevi, in, Brogan Rafferty or whatever.
This is the best time to experiment.
This is the perfect time to experiment and see what you can do by mixing and matching these tweeners into your lineup to see what they can do at the NHL level. Even if, best case scenario, Lind, like I said, plays 4 minutes and, ends as a -1 on the night, like whatever. If he survives those 4 minutes, then maybe you have something there. It's only upside, right? You don't lose anything. You're certainly not losing games because of Kole Lind. Like, yeah, like I was going to say, checked,
I would argue that it almost, I would say their playoff chances would improve at this point if you if you put Kole Lind in rather than one of the guys they have now. I can't see it getting worse.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Is like, Kole Lind's upside is he could be a top 6 distributor. Like he could basically play that Goldobin game, but be a bit more tenacious on pucks and actually play like an agitator role, which is something that isn't really readily available in any of their drafted prospects.
A bit closer to like Hoglander then. So kind of in that style.
Kind of like in the vein of like kind of like a Lapierre. Like he's a decent two-way player, but he has no problem agitating or being like a shit disturber to try and generate penalties around the net. Like he has no problem with doing that kind of stuff. And if that gives your top 6 like a look, like a definitive look instead of just, they play hockey. Because right now the top 6 is just we've got skill and we're going to try and score. But if you add an agitator to it, then suddenly it's like, oh, this is a tough line to play against. And hey, he might not work out. And worst case scenario, he gets bumped to the 4th line to play 5 minutes with Brandon Sutter in very limited sheltered minutes. Like if that's the worst case scenario, then that's fine. But you're going to see more out of what he can do in the top 6 than trying to pretend that Matthew Highmore was traded in exchange for Adam Gaudette because you think he's going to be like this top 6 potential player for you. Like get real. That's not why you acquired him. So during this stretch, when you're against the literal worst team in the North Division, for now, get Kole Lind in the lineup. You're not going to have this opportunity soon. You got to do it. It's just, it's so frustrating to see. Like we saw Michael DiPietro finally get sent down to the Utica, and they called up Artur Silovs. And in true Canuck fashion, Demko was then ruled out with a lower body injury, which is fucking aces in terms of comedy. But like the DiPietro thing, that like there's so many things that you could say are fireable offenses for this GM and this management group. But the fact that you have a 21-year-old goaltender who's like one of your prized assets and he sits the entire fucking season on a taxi squad taking lessons without game action, that is so fucking bad. And like, what is DiPietro going to the AHL in the final like 3 weeks of the season going to teach him? Because
it'll get him games, which it does matter. I will say
the goaltending in the AHL right now is sub 900 league average. It was like last time I checked in my save percentage thing, it went from 904 down to 899.
Holy, like what's happened this year? Just like
it's because the goaltenders are all on taxi squads, like legitimate third string goaltenders are all on taxi squads this year. So you have a lot of ECHL guys or kids right out of junior. The Comets have this kid Joel Hofer who had a pretty good World Juniors in the last World Juniors, and he's played I think sub 900 hockey for them, and he just got one shutout after I think facing down like 67 shots in a single game. And so you have like atrocious defense and ECHL goaltending. So you're going to have DiPietro practicing with NHL guys and AHL tweeners for the entire season, working on his reverse post integration, all the things that Ian Clark loves to teach in his guys. And he's going to go apply it against guys that just wind down the wing and tee up one-timers from point blank. Just can't apply any of the knowledge that he's learned because he's not testing himself against NHL shooters. He's testing himself against ECHL players and AHL tweeners. Like I'm so sick of hearing that, like, oh, he's got practice time with one of the best in the world. It's like, okay, you can practice all you want. Game action.
Yeah, you can't discount that. Yes, being able to work with Ian Clark for the whole season and is great from a technical and like learning standpoint. Yeah. And by all accounts, from what we've heard, he was perfectly fine. From what we've heard, there wasn't any supposed complaints. At least from what his agent said or anything.
I don't think they'd be coming out with complaints. Even if they had him, I feel like they probably wouldn't.
But either way, I do think I think that regardless of where he's going, the fact that he is going to get games is huge. Even if it isn't NHL competition, I think again, you can't replicate true game experience within practice. It's just not possible because you're always going to be playing against because the skaters are always going to be playing against their own teammates. They're never going to go 100% because that would be nuts. You're not going to you're not going to potentially risk injuring or hurting someone on your own team.
Yeah.
So you're not going to
your goalie with a slapper.
No, you're never going to try and tee it up the way you normally would in a game. Because so at the very least he'll be going to a league where people are going to be trying their absolute hardest. And I think that the fact that he's going to get to do that, plus still get to work with Curtis Sanford, who is supposed to be like just a straight up extension of Ian Clark.
Of him, yeah.
Right, supposed to be an extension of Ian Clark. I don't know if this is gonna. I think this is gonna be a lot better for him. I think the fact that they're just gonna get him into some games is gonna be really, really good.
Yeah.
Of course, it does suck because he probably would have gotten an NHL game if they had just literally waited one fucking day.
That is the ultimate Canucks scenario where they finally they're fine. Like, and this in their minds, this is a proactive decision to move him to Utica and get him games. And the second they do it, Demko's like, "Oh yeah, I'm injured in the warm up. I can't play. Get Archer Silovs in the backup." Like. My god!
I mean, exciting for Artur Sila.
Good
for him. Silvos, yeah. Remember, I always talk about in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I love that song about Yukon Cornelius. What is it called? Silvos in Gold, something like that. Something like that. Yeah. That was a bit tough. And actually, speaking of that, usually when we do these episodes, I post the lineup picture that the Canucks put up in our prep sheet. I couldn't do that today because it mysteriously disappeared in the middle of the night while I was when I went to go get it. It had been deleted because of multiple spelling errors, including Silvos was on the photo version, and also Hauerluck was spelled Harluriuk or something. It was spelled like they had flipped two letters around and made it different. But
to be fair, like Hauerluck is a weird name to spell.
I agree, but also you should just have the names ready to go. You shouldn't. Yeah. Are you retyping them every single time?
That's what I didn't get because like in Photoshop you save templates.
Yeah, like you save the name as its own layer, and then you just move that layer to the spot you need.
And then you align so that they're centered horizontally or whatever, and then that's it. Yeah. But like, are they typing it all individually every single time? That would be exhausting.
Either they have, or we didn't notice, or all the other ones also say Haluruk, and we haven't noticed. That would be very funny. That would be really, really. That would be both really sad and very funny if we
just nobody
the entire fan base had just not had it click in, and it took the Silvos misspelling for people to go and triple check all the other ones.
They asked Jace Hauerluck in the post game, so your name was spelled wrong, and he's like, "That's how they always spell my name. That's what my name is spelled like." And he's like, and everyone's like, "Oh."
You know what? I believe there was one player, I want to say in the Leaf system for a long time, who, or at least for 1 year, they had been misspelling his name on the score sheet, or they had been misspelling on his jersey the whole year. And this kid was too polite to say anything. He never said a thing, and nobody knew. And then at the start of the next year, he said something, and they're like, "Wait, what? We'd been misspelling it this whole time, and you didn't tell us."
Wow.
Which is just really sweet, but at the same time, like, guys, spell check, double check your lists. You gotta double check those lists.
That to me is fine. That's kind of cute, like that the player just went along with it. But I had to point this out because this bothered me so much when it happened. But when Danny Briere was like, "Stop calling me Danny Briere, it's Daniel Briere," and he refused to go by Danny Briere anymore. Do you remember this?
I don't remember this.
Prior to the season, like they were like, it's Dan, it's no longer Danny Briere. He doesn't want to be referred to as Danny Briere. And it was like, bro, you've been Danny Briere your entire fucking career. You can't just change your name and be like, call me something else now. Like, you're a hockey player.
I'm a man now. I'm Daniel.
It was so bizarre.
Or he just wanted to really like capture some Sedin magic, and he wanted to be Daniel for a day. That's also possible. That could be it. Maybe he's evolved. Maybe now in retirement he's just Dan. He's Dan Briere.
He's Don.
He's Don Briere. Yeah. It's like the evolution of people named like Robert, like how you go from like Robbie to Bobby to Bob. Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about this in our off the post episode, but we could go into a whole segment about Bobs in sports right now if we wanted. I will, but you know what? We'll stick with goaltending for a second because obviously Silov's. I don't think he'll play. I don't think he'll play a game. He's probably not going. I think if DiPietro had been here to back up, I think he would have gotten last night's game. He would have gotten this one, and then Holtby started this next one. The one tomorrow, which by the way, if you didn't know, it's a 2:30 p.m. start on a damn Wednesday.
That's a weird one.
Why?
That doesn't even help people in Ottawa either. Like,
no, it's I mean, I guess it's a 5:30 for them, but most people are getting out of work at that point. Like,
yeah, and like if you're like an Ontarian or whatever. Like, you're probably like a government job, so you're working 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're probably missing the game.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, obviously, it's not like anyone's going to the games at this point, so it's not like that matters. But for the TV audience, it is baffling that they do that. If you told me that's a weekend game, yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
Wednesday, like,
but this comes down to like the scheduling being like just weird in general. Like, what was it, like Sunday or Saturday when they had like 13 games all starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, and it was like you couldn't stagger them
out
a bit, like not even by 10 minutes. Like, really?
No.
Anyway,
but
yeah, like that injury to Demko. I think they said, like today or something like that, they're like, oh, it's most likely day to day. It won't be anything significant, so he might come back. And then I saw a tweet where someone was like, yeah, you know who else was day to day? Elias Pettersson.
It's true. That's true. It's entirely true.
For the Canucks' sake, they better hope that Demko's back pretty quick, because I don't know if I can do another junior goaltender coming in and getting lit up 7 goals.
I mean, I think they would just ride Holtby at that point. Well, they couldn't, because they'd have to there'd be back-to-backs, and they can't play Holtby on every back-to-back. No. So I guess Silovs would have to get into at least like 2 games. It's like, okay, with the Demko injury, I'll say this, like, it does concern me that, you know, he talked about on after his one game against the Senators. Was that the Senators game? Yeah,
that was the first Senators game. Yeah,
right. He talked about, you know, the brain fog issues, how he had been one of the ones who dealt with COVID hard. He took his body did not take it well. This is kind of what we have to look. This is kind of one of the things that we have to be really concerned about right now, because of we were already worrying about the idea that these guys are coming in having gone for a month out of game shape. And being sick. They're not going to be necessarily ready to go. And you worry that he is just the first domino to fall kind of thing here, because I mean, we saw how gassed the whole team was on in this last game. And Demko, and I worry about the idea of are they about to rush him back into the lineup to try and save some playoff hopes here, because, well, luckily for them, Demko or Holtby is playing incredibly well. He's been their best player by far this whole week. Yeah. He was fantastic last night. There wasn't one goal where I was like, oh, he should have had that, or it's like, oh, like, no, it wasn't like.
They came off of the team basically getting completely crushed. Like, it wasn't like, oh, Holtby let in a softie. It was like, no, the team just gave up, basically. Stood still.
made like multiple huge saves in like the final minutes of the game and held them in as long as he humanly could.
Yeah.
And so luckily in that case, like it looks like they can buy Demko some time here to get over the injury or anything, and they're not going to panic and freak out and rush him back.
Yeah.
But it's still not good that this is a guy who again was off of the ice for a while. Did not come back for the first game because he was dealing with health issues. Plays one game and then immediately back out. Like it
doesn't help either that Demko has a history of concussions in his hockey career as well. So it's like you hear Tyler Mott saying he needs extra time because he's had concussion related symptoms like brain fog and his head just not being right. And you're like, okay, well, they're saying it's a lower body injury. I have no reason to doubt them that it wouldn't be a lower body injury, but like you hear the whole brain fog thing, you're like, man, you hope it isn't anything worse because, man, like if Holtby like fell back down to earth and was playing like he was to start the season, then the playoff hopes are really doomed. And then you really have to wonder, what is Travis Green going to do with the remaining 16, 17 games of the season? Because it's not going to be pretty hockey at all.
No. And also just to kind of talk about the goaltending as well, like from the Senators' standpoint, if I were able to give out an Infinity Gauntlet to a goaltender this week, I would have given it to Marcus Hogberg as well.
The Hog.
Because you know what, like he came into a tough situation where Matt Murray gets hurt in the last game in Vancouver. He gets hurt on a like kind of an accidental play. Like he gets called on that tripping penalty, right? Like everybody's like, oh, he tripped for Tannen. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
But it was pretty. But then you watch the replay and you realize, oh, he didn't actually mean to trip for Tannen. What happened was he overextended his leg, trying to reach for the rebound, and he kind of just instinctively, as soon as he realized he was hurt, like leaned out to kind of try and like stabilize, and he just ended up taking out Virtanen's skates instead. And now we found out that his season's done. Matt Murray's done for the year. He's not coming back, which is like too bad for him because man,
it seemed like he was coming back a bit. Yeah,
he had 2 shutouts in like a week. He was doing all right, and now they're in a situation because they had lost Anton Forsberg already in that game. Before that game, also in a similar kind of situation to Demko, where he got hurt before the warm-ups, before the official like on-ice warm-ups, he got hurt. And they had to bring in they had to get they had Hogberg backed up, and then Hogberg backed up for that game, and then ended up finishing with Artem Anisimov expected to go in as the 4th string because they can't use a David Ayers this year.
No e-bugs, which is
COVID rules. Yep.
So lame.
I mean, it sucks because I was gonna bring my gear to the rink on Monday just in case. You never know. Like, no. Actually, somebody did somebody asked the question, what media person would be the best Canucks media person would be the best e-bug, and somebody answered me, and I was like, yes,
that's
like
me.
That was my proudest moment of the week. That right there, that was it. But in all seriousness, I mean, the Senators are now down 3 goalies.
Every goalie,
because
basically.
Yeah, Hogberg was already hurt this year. They've lost Murray, they lost Joey Decord, and now Forsberg, who, poor guy, went through like the ridiculous waiver claims, got claimed by 4 different teams, and this is the thanks he gets. Like it's been a rough year for injuries all across the board, and I mean, I guess, we'll get into that a little bit in a second, but I guess we should wrap up some of the Canucks stuff first, before we get into anything there.
Sure.
I guess we could we could talk about Elias Pettersson, because his season
speaking
is
of
also...
injuries, like that's what I was trying to say, like the whole Demko being day-to-day thing is kind of like, oh, well, okay, we don't have to worry about the Silovs thing just yet because they're saying, oh, he's going to be back pretty quick. But then you think of, okay, well, Elias Pettersson's his wrist issue was just going to be a couple days, and then it turned into a week, then it turned into a week issue to being rumors from like Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman being like, "Oh, we're not too sure how serious it is. His season might be done, but hopefully he'll be back for playoffs, which they're currently not, qualified to make right now. So it's a little like, I mean, I think everyone's kind of been on the same page anyway, where they're like, the season's kind of a loss anyway. Like, shut him down and get the surgery you need so that you're better for next season when things might be a bit better. Because, I mean, the season's kind of in the tank anyway. They don't really stand to gain anything by him rushing an injury. Return from injury to what, really make a push for 5th place. Is that worth the long-term health of his wrist, his shot, his passing? Like, is it?
No.
I don't
now, the one good thing is that it doesn't sound like it's going to need surgery, which is like the fact that they were even willing to hold out this long, I would say, and say that they felt he would be ready for the playoffs would indicate to me that he doesn't probably need surgery, which is good, because if you can avoid surgery, you should. You should rehab if you can instead, because that I think they say, like, with surgeries, it's kind of it's not necessarily a short-term fix, but it's not the best way to go about it necessarily, because if you can let it rest up and heal on its own, like doing like exercise, like the whatever exercises or like stuff you might need to do, like a doctor might prescribe to you, it's much better for the long-term health of your body to do it that way, and it might like heal back as properly. When you do the surgery, it is a little bit of a quick fix sort of thing, where it's more about it's going to cut down how much time it is in recovery, but you might hurt it again, and you might need to do this all over again, and it might be not as easy this time, the second time around, So if they can avoid surgery, that's the best case scenario here. I would say, like, don't rush him back. There's no reason to bring him back into the lineup unless you are like in the playoffs already and already like
if they had caught Montreal and it was like, okay, in the final 10 they need to somehow be above 500 hockey to really cement their place, then I'd be like, yeah, okay, I can see why Elias Pettersson would want to, return from his injury stint to give his team the best chance they have. But as it stands right now, the way that this thing keeps getting drawn out and dragged out, it just seems kind of like, what's the sense?
Yeah. And honestly, even let's say they do catch Montreal, let's say they win that 4th playoff spot, even then, you maybe can go like, okay, we're not going to play Pettersson through the first 4 or 5 games of the playoffs. Maybe you take kind of the Steven Stamkos approach, the way the Lightning did, where they were like, okay, we're going to play him if we're coming down to it's sort of do or die situation. So like if the Canucks are facing elimination and he's good to go, then throw him in. But if as long as you're in it and like in the series and you're not facing like the last game or it's done, don't even just leave him. Let him sit and rest and keep going and see how far you'd be able to get in that situation. Because you want to only use him essentially at this case if it's a last resort. That's the only good legitimate reason to try and bring him back in, is if it's just the last final shot you're going to get.
Yeah, he comes in on one shift, tees up a one-timer, scores, bench the rest of the game, team wins the cup.
If he wins Game 7, he could win Game 7, don't start him Game 1, let him sit the next 4. Let him sit the next 4 and then come back for 5. Like that's how it's done. One other thing I think we will touch on is the defense for the Canucks. Like specifically Edler and Nate Schmidt. Nate Schmidt had a weird week, like, because he went from having a pretty good second game against the Senators. Like, he was, I think, their best. Like, it was one of his best games as a Canuck. He looked very good. I think he had a goal. He had a strong goal too. Like, it was just a perfect shot. And then you go from that to
whatever yesterday was.
Yeah, to the first game in Ottawa where he tries this pass across to JT Miller. It's immediately picked up by Brady Tkachuk. It's a 2-on-1 the other way, and Josh Brown puts it in.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, their pairing did not do well. They were out for both goals. I don't know. I don't like that. I mean, I don't like that pairing. But what else are you gonna do right now? Like,
Well,
Rathbone? I guess maybe.
All this pairing has really done for me this season is convince me that the team needs a succession plan for Alex Edler because they cannot bring him back another year. He is so clearly just not up to NHL speed anymore. And Nate Schmidt is like a quality defender, but he is having to bear the brunt of a D partner who doesn't have wheels anymore, can't shoot, takes penalties egregiously because he can't keep up with play. Like everybody, like Edler's great. Like the fact that he's been a Canuck for as long as he have, that's wonderful. He's provided so many minutes and, like tough minutes, not even just like minutes, but like the tough, hard matchups,
grueling minutes.
And
it wears you down.
You just watch that game on the other night, and it's just like it was like pulling teeth watching them get caved in their own end, unable to, reverse along the end boards without having to engage in another battle because like the young guys of the Senators are taking the puck midway. They had nothing. Like watching them get caved and shelled in their own zone for like 3 minutes at a time was like, oh, so hard to watch. And at the same time, I can't fault them because maybe a lot of this is COVID related, but even before COVID, Edler did look slow and lethargic relative to the youth movement that is in the Canada's North Division. It isn't getting any younger, it's not getting any older. Like, look at Ottawa. They've got freaking a daycare center just producing NHL prospects to keep playing, and none of them are slow. They are all fast. Edler's in it tough next year if, competing against a full league again. He'll be 36 or something? Ugh.
Yeah, he'll be 36 by, he'll be, oh, no, pardon me. He will be 35 still. He just turned 35. He just turned 35 on the 21st. Happy birthday, Eddie.
So then,
oh, no.
Yeah, so even then, though, at 35, like you can tell, he's just slowed down considerably. Maybe they bring him back on league minimum to play a 7th D role where he doesn't have to play every single game, and you can kind of shelter when he gets into bouts.
Honestly, I'd be fine if they brought him back on a cheap 1-year deal and put him on the third pairing. Just don't put him in the top 4 anymore. Like,
the problem is they don't have options.
If you want to shelter him in that like third pairing, honestly, I think he'd do a little better with if you give him a less workload, put him with the right partner on defense. As a third pairing guy, he's still an okay option, I think there. I think the main problem is he's now just playing a role that he is no longer really capable of doing properly.
So this is the thing. If you wanted to do that, you would have to have another right D option that is actually legitimately good, because even in the minutes that he's getting now with Nate Schmidt, he obviously can't keep up and is getting destroyed. So the solution would be to get another Nate Schmidt who can then be deployed in, sheltered, catered minutes and kind of, save him, like ease them along basically for the next season, 82 games, where they don't have to face against the top competition, be an elite shutdown line where Edler now becomes like an Oscar Fantenberg type, right? That's fine. But then you need to replace a second pair on the Canucks, which that's Rathbone a big ask. Blank. So even if you have Rathbone, you need another Nate Schmidt to be that shepherd for Rathbone to come along nicely, because can the team afford Travis Hamonic now? So they're going to need 3 bona fide right shot defensemen or guys who play on your right side next year when you have to replace Hamonic, Edler, and whoever it is going to be on that third pair, if it's not him.
Yeah. I mean, see, you talked about they need a succession plan from Alex Edler. I think the big problem we're realizing here is they never got a succession plan for Chris Tanev, which is what you would be really helpful right now. Like if you could have a younger sort of Chris Tanev type player, and I'm well aware that those are hard to find. Like Chris Tanev was for what Chris Tanev is, he's an extremely rare type of defenseman, and the way that he plays and like what made him so good is really hard to find. You don't see a lot of him out there. But they never really... I remember looking at that group and they have Quinn Hughes and they have Olio Levy, but all these guys are scorers and you don't really have your shutdown. You don't have another shutdown guy ready to go. You don't have that. And like Nikita Trampkin, if he signed, wouldn't be that guy either. And that's who's apparently coming in at some point, which would be yikes. But no, you don't. They don't have a shutdown defenseman because even Nate Schmidt, that's not what Nate Schmidt is either. That's not really what Travis Hamonic is altogether. Like he's kind of closer. He's about the closest thing they have right now. Maybe Jalen Chatfield is kind of close too in that kind of regard. But again, we're still talking about nowhere near what they need to be looking for. And that's been their biggest problem. That's a big problem. The fact that they didn't properly find the right they didn't properly find a successor for Tanev, and they didn't get that player. They should have had that player in the system a long time ago. He's not there. And now now we have to talk about the fact that they don't have an Edler necessarily. They might have they have good defensemen. They just don't have necessarily the most well-rounded cast to choose from, you know? Like they're all very much scorers, or like they're all very offensively charged.
They have like based on like how the Canucks like to build their defense. Like obviously they saw Stetcher like as like a third D. They never thought that he would be anything more than just a guy who can provide 5v5 minutes, even though
Stetcher would come in handy right now. Jeez.
Oh, absolutely. Like he was like, for me, he would have been a good succession plan because he could be that third pair guy for Edler to play sheltered minutes with. You know what I mean? And he would have been cheap.
Third pair,
That would have been a great third pair. And then you'd have Schmidt, Rathbone, and Hughes, and whatever cheap right D option they can pick on the free market to get his stats inflated by whatever Hughes brings to the table. You know what I mean? Like that would have been a perfect setup if this team ever thought ahead. But right now, it kind of seems like what they're going to have to do is beg Edler to take a league friendly or league minimum team friendly deal, and then Jim Benning and company somehow take advantage of the expansion draft. Like I think they've said for like a while now, like Drance and JPAT have been saying the Flames are a team that they could look at to take advantage of in the expansion draft, especially on D, because they have 4 eligible guys that can be taken and they can only protect 3 of them. Yeah. So right now they have Mark Giordano, who's their captain by all means. He's a late bloomer. They have Hannafin, Rasmus Anderson, and Chris Tanev, who they just gave trade protection to, so they would have to protect him. So there's a third option there where you can conceivably take away from that team so that they don't lose him for nothing. And if that's like a Noah Hannafin, if that's a Rasmus Anderson, like if you're picking up Rasmus Anderson before an expansion draft to add as your first pair with Quinn Hughes, like you're looking a lot better than what it is right now, where you're discussing which, AHL tweener is going to come in and provide you 18 minutes a night, because that's not going to happen. I'm looking at their sheet right now. Rasmus Anderson is good as well. I'm also even looking like Oliver Shillington's right there too. He's also there. The only issue there is
he's not.
He was on waivers and nobody wanted him, and he's on a cheap
weird
ticket.
because he's good. he's good. Because he's
I agree.
decent.
I'm with you.
He's pretty decent. I saw him in Stockton for a long time. He was a very good defenseman, and then he seemed to do well for a while.
So it's a bit weird that he was like, if you get him for free, I don't think you'd want to trade for him now for expansion draft considerations. I think what you would want to do is you'd try and go for Rasmus Anderson or Noah Hannafin. You'd have to.
Yeah.
It depends on who Calgary values more.
They're both 24. They're both. I mean, Anderson would be the one you'd want more. Particularly, not only is he cheaper, he's also a right defenseman, which they have, which is obviously the one that they have. They need the most help. The side they need the most help on. Mm-hmm. If you can get Rasmus Anderson, that's a good fit. If you can get something to work there.
Yeah, and suddenly that second round pick for Sven Berchi isn't as bad anymore because eventually you ended up with Rasmus Anderson anyway. So you ended Calgary up do the work for you.
Yeah, you did. They did all the development work for you.
It's like guy tapping his forehead. It's the tapping the forehead meme. You know what I mean? It's like you can't screw up the draft if someone drafts better for you.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's just like a complete roundabout way to say there's a ton of implications to what this team needs to do for their D-core heading into next year, and that's just Calgary. Like, I think who is it? It's not Tampa. It's
there's a good
Carolina still has like a guy that they can lose to the expansion draft. Maybe you pick up one of their guys and you ditch Madison Bowie or whatever. Like the Canucks are now set up that they can take on another defenseman who is like another Nate Schmidt conceivably. And if they can rebuild their core by having really good defensemen fall into their laps because other GMs aren't positioned well for this expansion draft, and that's what they need to do. Yeah. And right now, the cynic in me says they're not going to do any of this, and it's going to be another 2-year deal for Edler, and they're going to talk about how fucking good Jalen Chatfield was again, like they did last year. Yeah, I mean, Chatfield's been fine. Don't get me wrong. He's basically just been okay. But
he's not. But that's all he is. He's never going to be better than that. Like
we're talking about a team that should be competing for playoffs. Conceivably, can't rely on guys coming in and being fine. They need to talk about, okay, instead of picking off one Nate Schmidt, we need a team of Nate Schmidts that are going to carry us into playoffs because their defensive play is elite. It can't be. We gave Ulevi the infinity blocker earlier, but he's not a long-term solution anymore. No. Like he is what he is. He clearly doesn't have the foot speed to compete against like the top competition of the North Division, let alone the entire NHL.
Friendly reminder: the North Division is easily the worst defensively. Like that's the thing. Easily.
It is such an ugly division that when your former 5th overall draft pick is getting like walked, or he's not getting walked as much because they've been very good at prescribing him minutes against like other fellow AHL players. But that's what he is. He's a high-end AHL defenseman at this point. He just doesn't have the foot speed to be a guy that you would say, he's gonna take on Alex Edler's 22 to 24 minutes a night on a second pair. He's just not. And so they need to desperately overhaul that defensive core in anticipation of the expansion draft, let alone in anticipation of next season. It's going to be wild what they have to do.
I'm just scrolling through the list, looking at some of the teams that are available, like what might be available. Like Dante Fabro from the Predators might be available, might be out there. You look at Colorado. I mean, they're going to have to pick between. They're going to have Cale Makar. They have Cale Makar probably. It has to be protected. And Eric Johnson as well because he has a no move clause, which means that one of Sam Girard, Devon Taves, Ryan Graves will be available. Like any of those would be a huge upgrade from what you have now. Yeah. You mentioned Carolina. I mean, they have Dougie Hamilton, they have Jakob Slavin, they have Brady Shea, they have Brett Gardner. That's 4. And then they also have Brett Pesce, who's decent as well. Like, they have a they're stacked defensively, and they've already gave up Hayden Fleury to the Ducks at the trade deadline because they were going to lose. They were almost assuredly going to lose him in the expansion draft, and they got so they moved him ahead of time to make sure that they got something. So that's what you're looking at. That's what's available to the Canucks if they go out and they're proactive and they go looking for something good.
And
you know what?
Like they say that though when we just spent like 10 minutes talking about how the DiPietro move was the least proactive thing of all time because it took 3 months to fucking make it happen. So and literally, but what's frustrating is like they did it with Nate Schmidt. They did it for Nate Schmidt, and you almost think like, God, if they had cap space, they wouldn't have, and they would have gone for something more. They would have gone for like some expensive defenseman, for some expensive UFA guy instead. If only they had
my
cap
biggest
space,
worry. Yeah.
If only they had cap space and they could have offer sheeted Eric Cernak or something. You know, when Tampa was completely screwed and against the cap, and everyone just kind of let them be.
I mean, every team was dumb for that one. Like, I mean, how did they let that happen? I did want to run one stat line by you, really quick, as we get into like the NHL.
Yeah, before we get into the NHL news, yeah.
As we get into, I guess this kind of bridges the gap between the two, I guess. So there's a player out there right now, with in 44 games. He played 44 games. He has 25 goals. 11 assists for 36 points. That's a pretty good year for this guy. Do you know who I am talking about?
Sorry, what was the goal total again?
25.
And defenseman?
No, sorry, no,
okay.
Forward. This is a forward.
Is that Jared McCann?
No, that's a great guess though. That'd be very funny if it was. No, I am talking about Tyler Toffoli. Montreal Canadiens winger Tyler Toffoli, who the Canucks could have right now, scoring 25 goals for a team that is equally as good as the Canadiens in reality. Like, there's not much difference there. I saw Daniel Wagner making the like bit where he was like, I think it's pretty safe to say there are only 3 teams in the North Division deserve to make the playoffs. And I almost replied to him like, I think you could make a very good argument that none of them deserve to go. They're all wicked bad in certain points.
The Oilers are the one you could probably make a case for actually deserving it because they're getting unreal goaltending. They're like a 55-year-old. Yeah, and they're third.
Which is like, it's so funny. Like, they're the one team that they're the one team that I'm kind of like, okay, like, even though the Leafs have like an 11-point lead, I'm still just like, like, I just see the bottom falling out.
Kind of like Paper Tiger a bit. Like, they came out really hot, looked really good, and then all of a sudden everyone realized they don't have a goaltender. It's like, oh, right, that whole thing. But the Oilers are at least consistent at what they're doing. They have been elite the entire season. They've been exactly where they are the entire time, which is Oilers hockey.
They spanked the Jets 6-1 in that last game.
Why don't we get straight into the NHL news, because we can tie this right into my poor baby Jets. Nikolai Ehlers. Injuries. They did my boy dirty. Those wascally weefs hurt Nikolai Ehlers somehow. He took like a weird hit, I guess, from Jake Muzzin or Joe Thornton. They're not really too sure which one it was, but it was enough to end his season.
Have you seen the highlights from those 2 Leafs Jets games? They're fascinating.
They're
real chippy.
Very chippy. Which is like a very weird rivalry.
Yeah, it's literally the whole like the long storied rivalry of Winnipeg and Toronto.
Yeah, everyone's favorite.
Literally, I can't think of 2. I don't think there are 2 other teams in the division more like platonic in terms of like heated rivalry than those 2. Yeah, like. Maybe Ottawa, Winnipeg, but even then, I feel like their games are pretty like intense.
They're pretty
I've seen some good games from them. Like, I've seen some good like 6-4 games from those 2.
It's just bizarre that like the Leafs and Winnipeg is the most chippy series in the NHL, right? Or in the North Division. Like, even that Battle of Alberta, like, isn't really that intense. Like, it started out pretty hot, but not really.
No. And like I remember the one thing there being for like the Leafs and the Jets was of course the Austin Matthews Patrick Laine connection, but that's obviously gone now. So that doesn't really make any because exactly. They have Pierre-Luc Dubois who ran Jack Campbell in one of those games. That's a great shirt, by the way. I'm just noticing the Short King Nils shirt. Fantastic.
We'll run through the NHL news and I'll close with my Short King Nils shirt story.
Okay.
It's pretty funny.
Oh, I'm excited to hear it. But yeah, like the injuries are really starting to pile up league wide right now.
The other day, it was like
this division in particular.
Every piece of news the other day, Monday or whatever it was like done for the season, player done for the season, player out for several months, player getting surgery. It was like
Noah
nothing
Hannafin
but
is
injury
one of them.
news. It was insane.
I
couldn't believe it. It was
the Flames is done,
and it's like
Murray.
I mean, I go back to like why are teams playing this season? It's so dangerous, and like you have Calgary, like their schedule got kind of fortunately didn't get wonkified too badly when Josh Levo tested positive, but obviously the Canucks schedule is a complete mess. That pushed back the Toronto schedule a bit, so they had quite a few games in a short period of time cut off of it, and you're like, is it really worth it? Like, does the league desperately need them to play 56 games? Obviously they have like, I guess, contract obligations to reach that number, but you're seeing it now. Like star players, star defensemen for teams in the North Division are getting hurt for the remainder of the season off of seemingly innocuous shit because they're playing so fucking much. Like, at what point is Braden Holtby going to tear his groin because he's trying to carry like an exhausted COVID team on his back? Elias Pettersson probably broke his fucking wrist because he was so sick of having a 2% shooting percentage. Like, it is, it's culminating into this point where like the Jets for me were like, okay, they're a guaranteed playoff performer. They're going to get there. But now with Ehlers, like arguably a league-wide MVP for his team right now, is done for the season. That completely fucks their entire plans. Like
they might
that's their
be
star.
Like considering how important he's been for their success this year, and coupled with the fact that the rest of the team has not been playing that well of late, including Connor Hellebuck, who's had a few rough outings of the last.
Did you see his stat line? It was like 850 save percentage over his last like 6 starts or something like that. It's
and
like,
then he was he talked about how he didn't feel he deserved to be pulled, which tells you that there's probably not some great coaching relationship going on right now either.
Right,
Paul Maurice. Again, literally, like I don't want to like. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, the Canucks should the Canucks should tank because like that's kind of been the weird thing about this year is it's like you shouldn't tank. First of all, if you're like the Canucks, you shouldn't tank. There's absolutely zero reason to. There is no benefit to tanking in this particular year because of what a crapshoot the draft is going to be. And the fact that you could very easily get players who would normally go in the first round in like the third or the fourth, just because there hasn't been the ability to scout some of these players properly, right? So there's no incentive to do that. But at the same time, as much as I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, they shouldn't even try to make the playoffs, which I've seen like some people kind of do. You're almost like I almost don't want them playing more games than they need to because like
that May stretch when it like happens after the playoffs start. It's like why?
It's like if they get hurt for a round 1 exit or something. Yeah. And then that affects next year where where I think the intensity of like the regular season will go back to normal completely, and it'll be a regular year. Yeah. It's like, was that worth it? Like this is one of those years where it's kind of just like it. You know what? It's the rare year where I would say if the Canucks finished fifth and like a point or two out of the playoffs, and that was the best they could do, I would be like, any other year, I'd be like, this is the worst possible outcome. This year, I'm kind of like, hey, you know what? Just finish as high as you can. Just finish as whatever the highest possible place you can do is. You did great. I'm not going to give you any hard time if you.
Yeah, if you trust your scouting staff, it doesn't really matter where you finish this year, basically.
Yeah. I mean, there's like, you just gotta hope that they can pluck a few gems here and there, because this could be a really good year to like analyze which teams are do the best job at building like their draft group and everything, and who makes those picks and everything, because some of these teams are gonna walk away with really good players at much later than they should be getting them, and that's gonna really separate a few teams here and there, like of who's really doing the best job at finding the players and not just going off of the name recognition, right? Because you have basically none of that this year.
Yeah. Other NHL news, the broadcasting rights. So firstly, NBC basically said we're opting out of the bids for the NHL rights, which is
good.
Yeah, like,
look,
thank God.
We could do. I'll do my rant after. Keep going. I'll do my rant after.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add on this. NBC out is fucking rad. Thank God. But TNT, the Turner Network, apparently is the one going after the rights.
It's official.
It's kind of funny because it's like a lot of the media is like, oh, look at this deal, this $255 million a year, and I'm like, did you guys missed like the basketball deal where it's not exclusive and it's like $1.8 billion a season? Like, this is peanuts. Like, this is absolutely nothing, but okay, go off, Kings.
Look, I'm not going to get too bogged down in like the actual money aspect, because I actually don't think that's the real important part here. The fact that I think the fact that they went to TNT and or like Turner Sports, so Turner Sports is going to get I believe 75 national regular season games a year. They're going to get some streaming rights through TNT and CB. They're going to get the playoffs and the finals on the Cup finals 3 out of the next 7 years, with ESPN getting the other 4 on TNT and CBS. They also get every single Winter Classic. That's interesting. I did not realize that ESPN did not get the Winter Classic. And in a way, that's actually kind of cool that they can actually use that as that game has enough marquee importance that they can use that as like a actual like bargaining chip. Like, that's you get the Winter Classic. They can actually like make that part of the selling point. Right. And also now with streaming on HBO Max, that is big too, because HBO Max is already a pretty big service, and it's only going to get larger. Like, it's not Disney Plus, but it's getting there.
If that brings back that the Road to the Cup or whatever, the Road to the Winter Classic series that HBO do, like, oh, please, give us the content.
I'd be stunned. I mean, they can do it. They can very easily do it now. Here's why I think this is the most important thing about this is if you look at the correlation between ESPN and Turner Sports and like their already existing sports like broadcast deals, the other sport that they have in common, those two groups have in common, is the NBA. And I don't think that's a coincidence that the NHL went for deals with those two groups. Like, maybe this is just me speculating, but I think one of the things that I think it's pretty fun is that one thing the NBA and those two broadcasting partners in particular have done a really good job of is marketing the NBA and their players. They've done a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Like, selling the players as part of it and really making them the focal point. And that has made, I think the reason that the NBA's broadcasting rights are worth so much more now is because of the fact that they've done such a great job at marketing the league and the teams and all the personalities in the league. Right. Like TNT's big thing is Inside the NBA with where they have a panel with Shaq and Charles Barkley, and it's chaos and it's great. Apparently, it's a great show. I've never really watched it, but I've heard multiple different people tell me, including like hockey people tell me, that it's like the best panel, that it's like the best sports panel in North America. That it's just so funny and it's so informative and interesting.
Right.
And so imagine if those guys were able to bring a version, like something close to that, with that kind of level of interest and personality to the NHL, and how big that would be for them. Like how big for the sport it would be if they could find that mix. I
think we talked about this, I don't even know how many episodes ago, when we were talking about Stephen A. Smith's hype up video for what he knows about the NHL. And I said at that time, like, I don't know if the NHL and Stephen A. Smith will ever jive, because Stephen A. Smith has a personality, and the NHL and its players are like obsessed with proving that they are the most boring human beings on the planet. Like, did you see Connor McDavid's quote when they're like, Connor, what are your feelings on maybe hitting 90 points? He's like, I don't think about it. It's just like he's the guy from Futurama, the neutral planet guy. I have no opinion. If I don't make it, tell my wife hello. Like, literally, I think Mallory from the broadcast posted, like, retweeted like his answers. His answers were like the NHLPA questions, and they're so stupid. It's like, I always travel with, and it's like my team. It's like, oh my god. Fuck off. This is what and this is why I think that ESPN and Turner are gonna really do a great job at marketing guys. Like, I think you're gonna see a lot more guys like Austin Matthews getting airtime in the States, which is important, because here in Canada it's overload, but in the States you almost get none of it for him, which is terrible, because he's probably the best American player in the game right now. And I talked about it the last time, and I'll go on my NBC rant. The fact that Brock Besser and Quinn Hughes play on the same team, they're two of the best American-born players, and they're not on American national TV more than once a year, is awful. Pretty bad. That's terrible. That's terrible for marketing. Yeah. That's a terrible marketing strategy. If you imagine if, like, Elias Pettersson started getting, like, real, like, star billing in the States, and they started giving him, like, because he's got personality. He's actually got some of that. And he's fun. He's got a really wry wit, and it's fun, and it's great. He'd be perfect for that sort of marketing point of view. And the league needs that now more than ever. And this is an opportunity for them to really, like, rebrand themselves and make themselves much cooler and give themselves an opportunity. They're not going to be the NBA. They're not going to get to being the NBA, but you can never try. You can never get to that point. You can never get to that level of success that the NBA has if you don't try. Yeah. So I think that's important. And I think that the fact is, like, if they could have taken, it could have been less money. It could have been less money than they got on the last deal. If you told me they're still going to these two, I would say that that's better for the long-term future of the sport in that sense. And I'll say for NBC, them leaving, look, it was really good of them that they did a lot for the league. I'm not going to say they didn't do anything for the sport. They did do some things, and they were pretty loyal as a partner for I guess a decade and a half, long time. Since the lockout, since the big lockout in 2004. Yeah. They have been the sole U.S. broadcaster that whole time. And like we said with Sportsnet here, I think the fact that they had no one to compete with meant they got super lazy and didn't innovate. And they kept basically trotting out the exact same broadcast every single year for 16 years. And it got super old, super fast, and it wasn't good. It was lousy. Yeah. Their broadcasts were awful. I have never been more scarred as a Canucks fan than having to watch the 2011 Cup Finals with the NBC and Versus broadcasts, which would not stop bending over backwards to praise the Boston Bruins and
And oh, what a great, what a noble man Nathan Horton is. After being hurt by that evil Aaron Rome, like, oh my god, it was
Satan
nauseating.
Yeah, it really was.
It was awful. Like it was
Fortunately,
the worst. It was the worst experience. And then just like dumping on Luongo at every single turn, and then going back and like praising Tim Thomas for being the worst. It's just like it was awful. They did a terrible job with that. Like they did a good job with actually keeping the brand in like out there, like, and giving it and at the very least like treating them as much like their most important client, and creating stuff like the Winter Classic and those sorts of things. That's stuff that NBC had a big hand in doing, and that's helpful and that's great. But the overall product was not great, and what's more important is I think because NBC is not a big sports property, and and hence why they're shutting down their sports channel at the end of the year. It's pretty clear that most people didn't even know. Like they didn't do enough to make people aware of the sport outside of the realm. And I think now, again, I mentioned on the last one, now you're gonna get ads for like I don't know, Bruins Habs during like a LeBron James Lakers game. Like that's big. Those little things matter. And I think it's
more eyes on the sport, which is exactly what they have been looking for. Hopefully they get to a point where they're kind of like the NBA, where they're getting Marvel nights or whatever that is.
Yeah, I know. I put this in the doc because I heard this on Roxy Fever. Shout out to the boys. Happy birthday, Jackson.
Big JT Miller fan, Jackson.
Big JT Miller fan, Jackson McDonald. Hell yeah. They were more pessimistic about it than I think you and I would be, because I mean this is basically apparently the NBA is doing a Marvel themed broadcast. They're basically doing if you remember earlier in the year we talked about the NFL and Nickelodeon game, which was
Nickelodeon
awesome.
I get. Marvel, I'm actually probably going to err on the side of the cynic side of it, where I'm like, this seems
really
like a giant ad, so I don't know if I'm really down with that.
I feel like it's the same basic concept. I feel like it's the same. It's like it's not. This isn't for the hardcore fans. Like if you're not a Marvel person, you don't have to watch it. Or like if you're not a Nickelodeon fan, you wouldn't have to watch it. It's mostly for that niche group of, hey, here's an interesting way to watch a sport that you might not have watched before. It's kind of just good. It's a good way to get some new people interested, and I mean specifically, I think this is a good thing for kids. Like kids are gonna watch that who might not have watched an NBA game beforehand, are gonna probably watch that NBA game and see this whole they're giving out like superhero points to the players. It's kind of interesting, and I think that that Disney is gonna be the NHL partner next year.
Right.
I want my Star Wars night and my Marvel night, damn it.
Yeah, I mean it's something new. I'll give him that. Like,
you'll give it that. Yeah, it's certainly original.
You're doing something different, which is always good. Creativity's good. I appreciate them trying something that no one else is going to try, even if it comes off very awkwardly or cringe or whatever. They're trying something, so I'll give it the time of day. Frankly,
yes, you can't blame people. Getting people to try is always like having try is just sometimes that's the hardest thing to get people to do, is to try something new or try something a little bit innovative and interesting.
Yeah,
NBC. I'm so sorry. And I mean to kind of tie it into what we've seen lately. I mean, there's like I mentioned this on the Saturday game. At one point they were showing like on the screen they showed Tim Stutzla's skating speed when he was entering
cool.
like chasing a puck, and I was like, why isn't there you have a streaming platform, why don't you just have a version of this broadcast where you have the
data available?
You just have the data takes up most, you just have the game on a smaller window, and then have like the stats on one side, the stats on the bottom. Why not? Why haven't they done that? Like, you clearly have the capability. I don't know why they haven't done that.
They have the data and the means of showing it, so it's like, offer a broadcast or like an NHL TV option where you can access that at all times. I mean, people will be more interested, more engaged, so why not?
Try as many different ways. Like, and then there was I guess we'll give a shout out as well to they did the I don't know officially what it was called, but it was like they had the Hockey Night in Canada broadcasts in 8 different languages, which on Saturday, which was fantastic.
They showed off like the Punjabi version, the Tagalog version, like that was pretty dope.
That was fantastic. Next year,
it's just
add
like
Spanish.
Just like showing like that it isn't just like a one language binary. There's only one way you can consume hockey content. It's like, no, we're branching out. We recognize that there are unique subsets of people that watch our sport, and we are going to try and reach them no matter what. And if we have a Tagalog broadcast of a Marvel night, hell yeah.
That would be great. That'd be fantastic.
Then so it happens. So it's really cool. Lastly, the only other stuff from the NHL division, we had a couple teams qualify, clinch their spots. We had the Golden Knights, Avalanche, and Wild. And
it's so weird. It doesn't feel like it.
The most important one, though, is Carolina Hurricanes clinched playoffs with 69 points, and they had the funniest tweet about it too, where they're just like, "We clinched the division with 69 points," and it was like the Carolina logo photoshopped over
Leo DiCaprio, like Great Gatsby,
good.
I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great. Props to them. Props to their team.
Hurricanes are my second favorite team for lots of reasons. They're a fun team. Their social is fantastic. They're great. They're so fun. And if the Canucks don't make the playoffs, I think they're the team that I would be pulling for in that scenario.
It'd be fun.
One last thing I guess we should also mention, I wanted to touch on this just because I thought it was interesting. It's been 10 years since the Alex Burrows Slay the Dragon goal. Which we are both old. We are all old for that happening. I wanted to ask you. I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this. Do you remember where you were for that goal? Like, what did you do for that goal?
I was actually working.
Really?
I missed the game.
Oh my god! This is a good story. How did you find out they won then?
So what happened was, because you could hear people honking and shit.
So really? Okay.
So what happened was I used to work at a dollar store, and the shifts at the time where you'd either work like in the morning shift, but that was for all like the moms and stuff. And if you were a student, you could work 4:15 to 10:30 or 11. So because I was in school at the time and prepping for basically my first year outside of BCIT, I was still working. I started my new job and I was working my old dollar store job, and I had taken up a bunch of shifts to basically just like make some extra cash as I transitioned to a real job, basically. And I ended up missing the game because I was working a 4:15 to 10:30 p.m. shift, and
jeez,
it worked out in such a way. It might not have been 4:15, 10:30. I can't remember what day the game was on, but I know I worked the shift because when I left my shift, people were honking the entire time on the street. And so, because obviously, like, I missed the game, and I was like, oh my God, like, I guess they won or whatever. And I had no idea what the context of the game, but everyone was honking no matter what. And I was like, listen to sports radio on the way home. Like, oh, okay, shit. Sounds like it was fucking awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
And then
we won.
For the entire, like, after that series was done, I had no more shifts. So I spent the entire, like, next series against Nashville and then San Jose. Both series were basically going downtown, going to the Kingston pub.
Oh, yes.
So at that time, the pubs were so packed, you could not get a table unless you went like in the morning and sat there the entire day. So we'd go to the Kingston pub and we'd go to the back where they had a back patio, but they didn't have a TV until they realized they were so packed that people were coming for the game. So they hooked up like a dinky little CRT screen that was like probably the size of your monitor on your laptop right now. It was tiny. And we would surround this thing. There'd be like 15 people in the back patio watching this dilapidated piece of shit TV.
That's amazing.
As Maxime Lapierre would score like the solo goal against like Boston in Game 5 or whatever. It's just like shit you'll have burned in your skull, where it's just like you're watching this iconic game on this shitty screen in this pub in the back, and then
yeah, it's like the best. It's the best way you've ever watched a game.
It was the best,
like,
the best way I've ever watched a hockey game. Obviously, like being in the arena would have probably been better, but it was about as close as it can get for being good, because when they scored, it was fucking awesome. The whole bar just went nuts for like 10 minutes, and like, you know, Chara or like Marchand touch the puck, you just hear everyone be like, "Fuck you!" Like, shit was so rad. Reading that it was the 10-year anniversary, I was just like, "Fuck, that's there's an existential crisis for you, folks." I was 21 at that time. Actually, I don't even think I'd turned 21 at the time, because really? April 26th or whatever. So I would have technically not been 21 yet. I was still 20, which is horrifying.
Horrifying, yeah.
Like, absolutely horrifying.
I can't tell you how jealous I am that that you got to like live through that Canucks experience, like that run, like in Vancouver, and actually be here for it. Like we were obviously the only people in our small town that cared at all about the Canucks, obviously. When they won that game, like, because we watched the whole series obviously just at our house, because Lord knows no bar was going to show it. Nowhere nearby was ever going to show hockey, let alone the Vancouver Canucks in California. So we watched every game at home with our dogs. We were like my parents and I, and like the stress. Oh my God, I remember sitting at the corner, like the closest part of the couch, just sitting there like, Jesus Christ, if they lose, I swear. Like, we were just the absolute just stress. I will never forget that absolute stress. Excuse me.
I feel relief that I did work that shift, because I skipped. I mean, at the time, I wasn't really a Canucks fan anyway. I was just happy that like all my diehard Canucks friends or Canucks fans that were friends, who were all super diehard, like they were just loving that their team was finally going for it. I was kind of indifferent to hockey at the time, but I was stoked that they were all happy. So I was just happy to live in the moment. I didn't really start watching the Canucks until like, I think the season after that year, when they were just like, everything was falling apart, because I was like, okay, how did it change so fast? All my friends don't really follow the team anymore. Yeah, probably. But like all my friends, like they stopped like watching the team. They had no idea what was going on. And I was like, oh, so what's happened in the last 3 years, guys? That was really fun when they went on the cup run. What's gone on? And
what's the
I
deal?
fell down the rabbit hole, unfortunately, which was
and now you're stuck here.
And now I'm stuck here talking about their stupid farm team
on
the
our
7 people that care on a podcast, the 8,000th podcast of Vancouver culture. But we love it.
Yeah. And then the Burrows goal going in was crazy. Like, our dogs freaked out when we it was literally just the weight lifting off the shoulders of, oh my God, they finally beat, like, because literally, like, my parents are both not, like, my mom and my stepdad, they're not big hockey, like, they liked going to my games, they would watch the Canucks, they knew what the Canucks were doing.
Right. But they weren't like hockey people or whatever.
They just weren't diehards like I am.
Fair.
Suddenly I'm just dealing with like throat issues. I don't know why.
Fair enough.
I swear I'm not emotional because of
No, certainly.
Just great.
It's a very emotional day.
Yeah. Like, I remember just like, they followed the Canucks, like they would follow the Canucks basically just because I wouldn't shut up about it at home. They knew what was going on just because I would keep telling them about it.
Yeah.
And even they just fucking hated Chicago by the end of like those dudes. They're like, oh, finally, like,
because you get it. Like, you just kind of knew, like, that was like one of the props of like the broadcast at that time, was that they really cemented and hammered home how the Blackhawks just had the Canucks numbers every single year in the playoffs. Like, you knew the stakes. you knew where the team was at in their arc. Like you just knew like it was now or never. And then, yeah, like just like a brilliant piece of storytelling. One that really hasn't like occurred since in the playoffs. Like when was the last like real getting over the hump kind of moment? And maybe that was
Staniv's goal. Maybe like
like
that's about
the
it.
Caps winning their cup finally.
Oh yeah,
but even
from a
then,
general NHL standpoint,
but even then, it wasn't like they finally beat X team or whatever.
I will, and you know what? I know I spent 15 minutes dumping on NBC, but I will say that I was lucky enough for that series and that call. Like, obviously, we didn't get Jim Hewson or John Shorthouse, but we got in the States for that series. We got John Forsland, who to his credit, I think his call was pretty darn good too. Like, it wasn't obviously to the same emotional level that you would have gotten from John Shorthouse or Jim Hewson, who have obviously been with the franchise for years. Like you could reliving that recording like the Hewson goal. Like you just can hear the absolute just thrill in his voice, which of course makes Toronto fans hate him. But I think the call John Forsland saying they've exorcised the demons in Chicago sort of thing. Yeah. I think it was still a decent call, and I really appreciated Forsland's call of that
honestly,
game. He did a good job.
Honestly, all of the calls of the goal are like good. You know why? It's 'cause Pierre Maguire wasn't involved in any of them.
That's true. He was not.
He didn't chime in the moment of silence as the audience breathed in the moment to be like, I had a feeling he was going to score here.
Because one of the Blackhawks decided to be and then you're like, stupid. Why are you like Pierre? Why are you making me pity the Blackhawks because you won't stop talking about them?
Why are you ruining this moment? But anyway,
don't ruin this for me. And I guess
great, a solid anniversary. Really not a fan. That's been 10 years already. Makes me look back on all the things and the changes that I've gone through in my life, and makes me feel ancient and decrepit as I do record this episode very, very sick and ill with you. But anyway, folks, this is a really fun episode to record. Same idea. Total same idea.
You got it.
Even though like the Sens series hasn't really been the most exciting, there's still stuff to talk about. There's still so many stories to take away for this Canucks team looking down the future and down the road, playoff implications and beyond, expansion draft, all that stuff. So we enjoyed talking about this one with you. If you liked our content, make sure to check us out on YouTube. We post all of our podcasts in video format so you can see our pretty faces and the nice banners that I put up for Lachlan on his big day.
I'm very thankful. I love those. Thank you so much, dude.
I'll mail them to you, I think.
Make sure you leave a like on the video if you're on the YouTube channel, and hit subscribe as well as the bell notification, the bell icon to get notified whenever we post a new episode on YouTube.
Ring that bell, and
yes, ring that bell.
So like us on all of your favorite podcasting streaming services as well. You can leave us reviews as well. I think that helps us with our algorithm and make sure that we actually get higher up on like the searches for Canucks podcasts. Forward it to your friends. Share us on Twitter. We appreciate that. Lachlan, where can the fine listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Lock in the Crease. You can find my writing work at lockinthecrease.com, where I post the North Division power rankings every single Sunday. And obviously, I'm gonna have a super secret article coming out on a certain hockey team's website, maybe in the next week or so. So maybe look out for that as well. Cody, where can they find you?
The fine folks can follow me at Cody Sievertson on Twitter and at Comets Harvest on Instagram, and my website, cometsharvest.com, where I will be posting the next day's recap tomorrow, Wednesday, the 28th of April. Thanks for listening, folks, and we'll catch you on the next time.
One more thing. If you enjoyed the show as well, check out our Patreon. For $5 a month, you get bonus episodes, including one we are about to record in like 10 minutes from now. So we're going to record some more stuff because that's how much Cody loves you guys. He's literally he's doing his Michael Jordan flu game right here, where he's gonna power through 2 podcasts in one night because he's the best.
I do. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and yes, and you can get that for $5 a month. You can also join our $1 tier as well if you just want to support us and what the work that we do on our separate websites and you get the little bit of bonus like content from time to time, as well as like access to our Discord channel. So
yeah,
go check that out.
Cheers, everybody! Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.